Title: The House We Built. Chapter 1. The Stranger in My Home. The dishwasher was humming, the kids were asleep, and Laura was folding laundry on the couch while reruns of a sitcom played quietly in the background. It was Thursday night. Routine, uneventful, the kind of evening she used to crave. The kind of evening that now left her feeling invisible. Her husband, Mark, sat across the room, laptop open, phone in hand, barely glancing up. He hadn't looked at her in days. Not really looked. Not since the promotion at work had sucked up every hour of his time, every ounce of his energy. Lately it felt like she lived with a colleague, not a partner. They still talked about the kids' school projects, the broken garage door, grocery lists. But beneath every word was silence, and Laura had started to fear that this emptiness was permanent. She hadn't planned for anything to change. She hadn't gone looking for it. But change, as she would soon learn, didn't care much for plans. Started with a message. An Instagram DM from someone she hadn't thought about in over a decade. Daniel Myers. The name alone sent a ripple through her chest. High school boyfriend. Her first everything. They'd lost touch after she left for college and he'd joined the army. Life had swept them away in opposite directions. She got married. He moved across the country. And yet here he was. A tiny circle with his profile photo. A message that simply read, "Hey, I saw your post pop up. You haven't aged a day. Hope you're doing well." Smiley face. She stared at it for a long time. She should have ignored it. She knew that. But she didn't. "Hey, wow, it's been forever. Hope you're doing okay too." Beep. Then a reply. "Still breathing. Honestly just trying to survive being back in town. Moved here to take care of my mom, she's sick. Wasn't expecting to see you pop up. Crazy coincidence." Her heart beat a little faster. She told herself it was just nostalgia. She told herself it was harmless. They talked. Small messages at first. Catching up. Little jokes. No flirting. Just two people reminiscing. But something about Daniel's attention felt like water in a desert. He remembered things Mark hadn't asked about in years. Her old favorite books, the name of the dog she had in 10th grade, the band she used to play on loop. He didn't rush her messages. He didn't just give her time. He gave her space to be a person again. Not a wife, not a mom. Just Laura. Mark didn't notice she was smiling at her phone more. Or maybe he did and didn't care. He was working late again. He came home, gave the kids a hug, nodded at her from across the kitchen, and then disappeared into his office. She stood in the doorway that night, watching him through the crack in the door. Headphones on, forehead furrowed, a screen glowing in his face like he was staring at something important. More important than her. She went back downstairs. Another message was waiting. "If you ever want to catch up in person, I'm around. No pressure. Just coffee. Like old friends." Laura stared at it. She stared at it for a long, long time. And then she typed, "I'd like that." She deleted it. Then typed again. When? Chapter 2. Coffee that didn't taste like coffee. Laura didn't tell Mark she was going out. It wasn't a lie. It wasn't even a secret, not technically. She told him she needed to run a few errands after dropping the kids at school. He nodded without looking up from his laptop, muttered something about sending her the insurance login later. As usual. That was the thing about distance. It didn't show up with fireworks or fights. It slipped in between dish loads and calendar reminders, until "I love you" turned into, "Can you pick up more oat milk?" So when she stepped out that Friday morning, there was no guilt. Not yet. She wore jeans and a loose cream sweater. Nothing flashy. No makeup except mascara. But when she looked in the mirror before she left, she noticed she was checking herself the way she hadn't in years. Straightened her hair again. Reapplied her lip balm. Just in case. Daniel picked a small local cafe on the edge of downtown. Off the main road. Not busy. Somewhere that didn't smell like chain store coffee. It had exposed brick and mismatched mugs. People came here to talk, not type. He was already there when she arrived. leaning back in a chair with a ceramic cup between his hands. He looked older, of course. 10 years of weather in his eyes. His jawline was rougher, scruffed dark around the edges. A few gray streaks in his hair. But when he smiled, God, when he smiled, she felt 17 again. Still terrible at being on time, he teased, standing to hug her. She laughed. Startled her how natural it felt. Still obsessed with black coffee, I see. Hey, some things never change. They sat and talked. What began as "How have you been?" slipped into stories about their kids, their parents, the weird twisty ways life had gone. Daniel spoke about his mom's Alzheimer's. About leaving his job in Arizona to care for her. About how lonely the nights had become in the same house he grew up in, haunted by memories that didn't belong to him anymore. Laura told him about the kids, the PTA meetings, the soccer games, the therapy she never went through after the miscarriage 2 years ago. He didn't flinch when she mentioned it. Just nodded slowly and said, "That must have been hell." Mark never talked about it. Not once. Not after the initial hospital visit. He moved on like the world demanded he stay strong. Laura never pressed. She and Daniel sat for 2 hours. Then 3. Neither one looked at the clock. At one point, she laughed too hard and touched his arm. Neither of them pulled away. When she finally stood to leave, the sunlight had shifted through the windows. Her phone had 3 missed calls. From the school, then Mark again. She froze for a second, heart hitching. Had something happened? Well, voicemail. It was Mark. His voice was clipped, annoyed. "Hey, the nurse called. Ella's got a fever. I'm stuck in meetings. Can you go get her?" Tried calling twice. "Hope everything's okay." Daniel saw the change in her face. "Everything all right?" She nodded quickly. "Yeah. Just need to go get my daughter." "Of course." He stood with her. Outside the cafe, for a brief moment, they just stood there, the sun warm on their shoulders. She wasn't sure what to say. "Thanks," she said. "For this." He gave a small smile. "It was good. Better than I expected." Laura turned to leave, then hesitated. "Hey, Daniel." He waited. "If we do this again." He looked into her eyes. "You sure that's a good idea?" he asked. She didn't answer. Because she didn't know. She picked up Ella, brought her home, tucked her into the couch with a popsicle and cartoons. Mark didn't call again. Didn't ask where she'd been. Just texted an hour later. "Thanks for getting her. I'll try to be home for dinner." That night, as she loaded the dishwasher, she kept thinking about the way Daniel looked at her. Like she was a whole person. Like nothing about her was invisible. Later, in bed beside Mark, she scrolled through Instagram. Saw Daniel's name glowing in her DMs. Today felt like 10 years ago. In a good way. "You looked happy. Hope Ella's okay." Laura stared at it. Heart racing. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard. Then she typed. "She's fine. And yeah, today was nice. Too nice maybe." She hit send. Then flipped her phone face down on the nightstand. Mark didn't stir beside her. She laid in the dark, her body warm under the covers, her mind spinning like a wheel that had finally broken free from the track. What had she done? Nothing. Technically. But nothing was starting to look a lot like the beginning of everything. Chapter 3. Lines you don't get to cross twice. The next time they met, it wasn't supposed to happen. Laura had told herself that once was enough. One coffee, one long conversation, one moment of nostalgia. She owed her family that much. She told herself it was a closure thing, like an itch scratched, a chapter gently closed. But the human heart doesn't always listen to reason. The next Friday came too fast. The house was quiet after drop-off. Mark was on a business trip. 3 days in Dallas for some sales retreat he hadn't even bothered to explain. Laura didn't ask questions anymore. That was part of the rhythm now. Silence, distance, survival. The DM came in at 9:12 a.m. Daniel. Still craving cafe brick walls and mediocre lattes. She stared at it for 10 minutes. Made toast. Burned it. Laura. God yes. Just need an hour where I don't have yogurt in my hair or crayons stuck to my shirt. Daniel. Name the place. Laura. Same one. Daniel. Already grabbing a table. Was that easy? This time felt different. The hug was longer. The smiles more knowing. The silences between words weren't awkward. They were electric. Laura caught herself studying his hands when he talked, the curve of his mouth when he smiled. They talked about nothing and everything. About how time warps when you're raising children. How it feels to lose yourself inside your own life. He spoke about his deployments, the long nights overseas, the friends who never came back. And then, more softly, about the women he'd let go, none of whom made him feel what Laura did back then. I always thought if we'd stayed together, he said, then trailed off. Laura stirred her coffee. Don't, she said. Don't what? Don't say it out loud. Daniel leaned in. Why not? She didn't answer. Couldn't. She left an hour later, cheeks flushed, breath shallow, guilt scratching at her throat like broken glass. She didn't tell anyone. Not even her best friend Mia, who usually knew everything. That night, when Mark called to say his flight was delayed and he might just stay through Sunday, she told him, "That's fine. The kids miss you." And didn't mean it. The next morning there was another message from Daniel. I shouldn't have said what I did yesterday. But I don't regret it. She stared at it for a long time. Then typed, "Me neither." The third meeting happened at his place. She hadn't meant to go in. She'd told herself she was just dropping off a book he mentioned, one she happened to still have from college. He joked about wanting to reread it. She saw it on the shelf that morning while cleaning and thought, why not? He met her at the door in jeans and a gray t-shirt. There was something about him in that shirt. Lived in, familiar, dangerous. The kind of look that didn't ask questions but got answers anyway. The house was modest. Old wood floors, photos of his mother from better years on the mantel, stacks of records near the stereo. He made tea. She stayed standing, one hand on the strap of her bag like it might anchor her to the real world. You look nervous, he said gently. I shouldn't be here, she said. But you are. She nodded. I should go. But she didn't move. Daniel stepped forward slowly. Not rushed. Not aggressive. Just close enough. I'm not going to pretend this is simple, he said. And I'm not going to lie and say I haven't wanted to do this since the second I saw you again. She looked up at him. Her heart was pounding so loud it made it hard to hear her own thoughts. I have a husband, she whispered. I know. I have kids. I know that too. This would change everything. He nodded. Maybe. Or maybe it just shows everything you've been pretending isn't broken. Tears filled her eyes then. Not because she was sad, but because the truth was that she didn't feel sad at all. She felt seen. And then she kissed him. Soft at first. Careful. Like someone stepping out onto thin ice. But when he kissed her back, the ice cracked, and she didn't care. Clothes came off between the hallway and the bedroom. There was no music, no dim lighting, no soft words to mask what it was. It was desperate, honest, beautiful. And when it was over, she didn't speak. She lay there beside him, staring at the ceiling, the curve of her body pressed against his chest like it had been waiting years to remember what this felt like. The next day, she couldn't look Mark in the eye. He came back Sunday night with airport coffee and duty-free chocolate for the kids. He kissed her cheek. Said she looked tired. Did you sleep okay while I was gone? Yeah, she said. I was fine. He rubbed her back absent-mindedly and went upstairs to unpack. She watched him go, something inside her twisting into a shape she didn't recognize. Not guilt. Not regret. Just the terrifying realization that what she'd done had not broken her. And that was the scariest part of all. Chapter 4. The smell of smoke. Something had changed. It wasn't a crash or an explosion. It didn't come with a confrontation or accusations or tears. But things were different, and Mark, for the first time in months, maybe years, noticed. It was in the way Laura moved around the kitchen. Not distracted. Not frantic. like a woman who'd found the edge of a cliff and had finally stepped off it. He watched her pour coffee that Sunday morning, barefoot in leggings and one of his old college hoodies. She hadn't worn that in years. Something about the softness of her face, the way her shoulders rested lower than usual, struck him as odd. "You sleep okay?" he asked, sipping his own cup. Laura nodded without looking at him. "Yeah. Out like a rock." She wasn't lying. She hadn't slept that well in months. The next few days were a tightrope. Laura went back into routine like a woman possessed, packing lunches, replying to school emails, even making a Pinterest board for the upcoming science fair. It was all an overcorrection. Masked. She cleaned too much. Called her sister just to check in. Took Lucas to the park even though it was cold enough to turn their noses pink. She told herself she was holding it all together. But her phone kept lighting up. "Daniel, I can't stop thinking about the way you looked when you left. Daniel, I want more time. Tell me when. Daniel, do you feel guilty? 'Cause I don't. Not even a little." That last one sat like a stone in her pocket all day. Did she feel guilty? But not for the reasons she should. Not for the sex. Not even for the lies. She felt guilty because deep down she didn't want to stop. Mark started coming home earlier. Not much. Just an hour here, a meeting skipped there. He made dinner Tuesday night. Something he hadn't done in ages. Stir-fry, overcooked chicken, but still. He even poured her a glass of wine. They ate mostly in silence, the kids bouncing between bites and screen time. Mark cleared the dishes, watched her over the rim of his glass. "You've been different," he said finally. Laura froze mid-sip. "Different how?" He shrugged. "I don't know. More engaged. Like something switched back on." Laura tried to smile. "That's a good thing, right?" "Sure," he said slowly. "Just surprised me." And that's when it hit her. Mark had gotten so used to her distance, her numbness, that when she started acting alive again, it scared him. Because he hadn't been the one to wake her up. The next meeting with Daniel wasn't planned. It happened on a Tuesday. She was supposed to be at Target. She went to him instead. He opened the door in gym shorts and a towel slung over one shoulder. His hair still wet. His body glistening like he'd just stepped out of a dream. She kissed him before he could say a word. No talking this time. They didn't make it to the bedroom. Afterward, they lay tangled on the couch, skin against skin, breath mingling in the quiet like smoke after a fire. Daniel traced circles on her bare shoulder. "I keep waiting for you to say you're done," he whispered. That this was just a phase. A rebellion. "It's not," she said quietly. He sat up. "Then what is it?" Laura looked at him. At his chest. His hands. His mouth. At everything Mark used to be to her, but no longer was. "It's a reminder," she said. "That I still exist." Daniel nodded. "So what now?" "I don't know. Do you want to keep doing this?" She hesitated. Then, "Yes." He reached for her hand. Held it. Didn't ask anything else. And she let herself be held. That night she cried in the shower. Not because she felt dirty. But because she didn't. Mark found one of her earrings 2 days later. Not her everyday ones. A gold hoop, one she hadn't worn in months. It was in the cup holder of the car. "Lose this recently?" he asked, holding it up. Laura blinked. "Oh. Must have fallen out of my bag." Mark squinted. "When do you even wear these?" He shrugged. "I dunno. Maybe last week." He nodded, but his brow stayed creased. The first real crack came Friday night. They were in bed. Lights off. The quiet settling around them like a blanket. Then Mark spoke in the dark. "Are you seeing someone?" Laura's heart stopped. "What?" He repeated it. Flat. She turned toward him. "Why would you ask that?" "Because you're different. And I'm not blind. You leave more. Mile more. You're on your phone like a teenager. And there's this glow. Not for me. But for someone." Laura didn't breathe. Mark stared at the ceiling. I don't want to believe it, he said. But if I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong. Right now. Silence. Long one. Laura could have said no. Could have laughed. Lied. Denied everything. But her mouth wouldn't open. And that was the answer. Mark sat up slowly. Rubbed his face. Okay, he whispered. Okay. He stood. Walked into the hallway. Closed the guest room door. Laura lay in the dark. And this time the silence didn't feel empty. Felt like the beginning of the end. Chapter 5. What breaks in the quiet? Mark didn't come back to the bedroom. Not the next night. Not the one after that. Laura lay alone in their bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if the weight in her chest was grief or relief. The silence in the house had shifted. It wasn't passive anymore. It was tight, heavy. The kind of quiet that followed a slammed door or a confession whispered too late. The kids noticed almost immediately. Ella, 10 going on 40, asked the first question at breakfast. Why is Dad sleeping in the guest room? Laura looked up from her coffee, throat dry. He's just tired. He got in late and didn't want to wake anyone. Ella squinted. But he's still in there. He didn't eat dinner with us. I heard him close the door when I was brushing my teeth. Lucas, only 7, swung his legs under the table and shrugged. Maybe he's sick. Yeah, Laura said too quickly. He's got a lot going on. Ella didn't buy it. She didn't push, but she didn't forget either. Mark stopped texting during the day. That had been the last thread of normalcy. Quick check-ins, reminders to thaw chicken, a meme or two when things weren't tense. But after that night, his name stopped appearing on her lock screen. He avoided eye contact, moving through the house like a ghost with too much weight in his steps. On Thursday he missed dinner again. Laura called after the kids were asleep. Voicemail. Then again. Same thing. When he came in just before midnight, she was waiting in the living room, arms folded, phone in hand. We need to talk. Mark didn't stop walking. Now. Yes. Now. He let out a breath. Turned to face her. And for the first time in years, there was something in his eyes that scared her. He wasn't angry. He was done. Okay, he said. Talk. Laura opened her mouth. But the words didn't come. Because how do you explain to the man you built your whole adult life with that you cheated? Not because he was cruel or distant, but because you felt like you were drowning. How do you say it wasn't even about him? How do you admit you risked everything for someone who made you feel like a person again? Mark waited. I'm sorry, she whispered. I never wanted to hurt you. He nodded. But you did. Tears prickled behind her eyes. It wasn't about love. It wasn't about leaving. Then what the hell was it about? I was lonely, she said. For so long. And I didn't know how to tell you. You didn't try, Mark snapped. You just stepped out. You chose someone else. Silence. Then. Was it Daniel? Laura flinched. He already knew. Mark shook his head. Mia saw you. Last week. Downtown. She said she wasn't sure if she should tell me. But when you didn't come home until 5, and you couldn't look me in the eye. He trailed off. She didn't deny it. Didn't bother. They talked for 2 hours. Voices rising, breaking, falling again. No shouting, no thrown plates, just pain, honest and sharp. Mark demanded answers she didn't always have. Laura tried to explain what it felt like to disappear inside her own home, to feel unseen, untouched, and unspoken to. Mark countered with his own loneliness. How hard he'd been trying to provide, to hold it all together while feeling like a roommate instead of a partner. At one point he whispered, "Was I not enough?" And Laura broke. "It wasn't about being enough," she said through tears. "It was about me not knowing who I was anymore. And he just saw me." Mark's jaw tightened. "Yeah. Bet he saw a lot." She winced. "Please don't. You know what hurts the most," he said. "That you didn't come to me. That you gave him a piece of you that should have been ours." For the next week, they lived like exes who hadn't moved out yet. They made schedules for the kids. Alternated who handled dinner. Took turns at school pickups. When they were in the same room, they spoke in clipped phrases, as if politeness might make the bleeding stop. At night, Laura lay in bed and replayed everything. Every decision, every smile, every moment where she could have said no but didn't. And still, in her deepest places, she missed Daniel. Not just the physicality, but the ease. The way he made her laugh. The way she didn't feel like she had to explain her pain. He just got it. She hadn't seen him since the night of the guest room door. He texted a few times. She didn't reply. She couldn't. One night, Mark came into the bedroom, stood in the doorway and said quietly, "I don't think I can forgive you." Laura nodded, eyes full but dry. "I don't expect you to. But I also don't know if I can just throw this away." She looked up. "Then what are we doing?" "I don't know." And he left again. At school, Ella got in trouble for snapping at a teacher. At dinner, Lucas said, "I don't like when you both pretend to smile." Laura felt the weight of everything she'd broken pressing down on her chest like wet concrete. She was unraveling. But the worst part, she didn't know if she wanted to stop. Chapter 6. The day it stopped being a secret. Mark didn't show up for dinner again. At first, the kids didn't seem to care. Lucas was too busy reenacting a scene from a superhero show with a spaghetti noodle, and Ella had her eyes glued to her iPad. But Laura noticed. She always noticed now. Every absence felt like a statement. Every quiet room was a verdict. She called him once. No answer. Again. Voicemail. The third time it went straight to voicemail. That hadn't happened before. Something inside her turned cold. It was Mia who told her. Laura was in the grocery store parking lot when her phone buzzed. "Mia, you need to know something. Mark went to see Daniel." She froze. Cold rushed into her limbs like a wave. Her hands trembled on the steering wheel. "Laura. When?" "Mia. Just now. He left work early." "Sorry. I wasn't going to say anything, but I thought you'd want a heads up." "Laura. Did he say why?" "Mia. No. But come on, Laura. Why do you think?" Laura dropped the phone onto the passenger seat and sat there for a full minute, staring at her own reflection in the rearview mirror. She looked normal. Hair a little messy. No makeup. Just a mom who went to grab juice boxes and cereal. But inside, her stomach twisted like a rope about to snap. Daniel lived 20 minutes away. She broke the speed limit the whole drive. By the time she pulled up to his house, Mark's car was already gone. Daniel was standing on the porch, arms crossed. His mouth a thin line. His jaw was tight, eyes unreadable. He looked like a man who had just been punched without a fist. Laura got out slowly. "What happened?" she asked, her voice low. He didn't speak at first. Just stared at her. Then quietly. "He knows everything." "I know," she said. "No," he replied, shaking his head. "I mean everything." He didn't come to yell. Or swing. He came to look me in the eye and ask. Laura swallowed hard. "Ask what?" "If I loved you." Her chest caved in slightly. "And what did you say?" "I said yes." Laura's breath caught. "Daniel." "I meant it," he said, voice shaking. "I know I wasn't supposed to. I know this was all just supposed to be escape or comfort or whatever the hell it was in your head, but for me, it became something else." She turned her face away, hands trembling. "I told him," Daniel said, stepping closer, "that I didn't sleep with someone's wife. I reconnected with the girl I loved before life took her away. And when I got her back, I didn't want to lose her again." Laura's throat closed. "Why would you say that to him?" "Because it's the truth." "You don't get to say that," she said, tears rising. "This wasn't supposed to be love. This was, God, Daniel, this was a mistake." He stiffened. "Then why are you here?" "Because I don't know where else to go," she thought. But she didn't say that. Instead, she said, "Because I needed to stop it before it destroyed more than it already has." "Too late," he said quietly. Mark didn't come home that night. Laura put the kids to bed, sat in the living room, and stared at the fireplace that hadn't been used in years. At 11:37 p.m., She heard the front door unlock. Mark stepped in, dropped his keys, and walked straight past her. "Mark," she called out. He paused at the base of the stairs. "I'm not angry," he said without turning around. He stood. "Then what are you?" He turned to face her. His expression wasn't cold. It was hollow. "I'm tired." She walked closer. "I talked to Daniel." Mark nodded. "Of course you did. He told me what you said." "What he said? Did he lie?" "No." "Then what's left to say, Laura?" She didn't answer. Because she didn't know. Over the next week, the silence became a language. They talked logistics, kids, meals, schedules. But not about each other. Not about the nights apart or the phone calls unanswered. They moved like strangers with shared custody. And Laura knew. It wouldn't be long before the kids really felt the shift. Ella asked again. "Are you and Dad mad at each other?" Laura hesitated. "No, baby. We're just going through something." "Is it about that man?" Ella asked, voice smaller this time. Laura's heart stopped. "What man?" "I saw a picture on your phone. You were hugging someone. The cafe. You were smiling." Laura sat down slowly. "Ella, when did you see that?" "A while ago. I didn't mean to. I was just playing a game and it popped up." Tears filled Laura's eyes. "I didn't tell Dad," Ella whispered. "I didn't want him to be sad." Laura reached for her daughter and held her tightly, choking back the sound in her throat. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm so sorry." That night, Laura finally asked Mark the question she'd been avoiding. "Do you want to fix this?" He sat on the edge of the guest bed, face in his hands. "I don't know," he said. "I don't know if I can unsee it. I don't know if I can touch you without thinking of him." Laura wiped her eyes. "I get it. But," he added, "I also don't know if I'm ready to lose you." It wasn't forgiveness. But it wasn't goodbye either. And that somehow hurt more. Chapter 7. The Weight We Hand Down. The therapist's office was painted a soft, pale green. The kind of green that was supposed to make you feel calm, like you hadn't just walked in carrying the pieces of your life in a canvas tote bag, hoping someone could help you name what each one used to be. Laura sat on the couch across from Mark, the leather too cold, the light too soft. She kept her hands in her lap, picking at her cuticles, a nervous habit she'd picked up in high school and never quite let go. Mark didn't look at her. Not directly. Not yet. The therapist was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a neutral tone that somehow made everything feel both more real and more manageable. "I want to start by saying this isn't about blame," she said. "It's about understanding. About truth. The kind of truth that can survive what happened." Mark scoffed. It was quiet, but Laura heard it. "I'm not here for truth," he said. "I'm here because I don't want my kids to grow up in a house full of shouting and silence." Laura didn't flinch. She nodded slowly. "I'm here because I don't know how to ask for forgiveness when I'm not sure I deserve it." That was the first honest thing either of them had said to each other in days. The sessions continued. Twice a week. They were brutal. Some days Mark barely spoke. Other days, he unleashed everything. Years of neglect, resentment, confusion, quiet heartbreak. "You stopped choosing me," he said once. Long before him. "You stopped being in it with me." Laura took it. Every word. 'Cause he was right. But she had her truth too. "You stopped seeing me," she said. "I was just the mother. Planner. The problem solver. And I played my part, I did. But I was disappearing, Mark. And I didn't know how to scream for help without sounding ungrateful." "Sleeping with another man isn't a scream," he shot back. "It's a grenade." Home, the kids grew quieter. Lucas clung to Laura like a shadow, asking strange, loaded questions. "Are you mad at Daddy? Did I do something wrong? Why don't we eat dinner together anymore?" Ella became sharp. Her sarcasm matured overnight. When Laura asked her to pick up her shoes one day, she said, "Why?" "So we can pretend everything's fine again." Laura stared at her daughter and felt something fracture. Later that night, she sat outside Ella's bedroom and cried. Mark walked past without a word. And then, after 3 weeks of silence, Daniel texted. Just one line. I miss you. I still mean everything I said. Laura didn't reply. But she read it. Over and over. The therapist asked a question one day that changed everything. If you weren't afraid of hurting anyone, what would you choose? Laura blinked. What do you mean? I mean if there were no consequences. No kids. No marriage. No judgment. What would you choose? Mark tensed beside her. But Laura didn't answer right away. Because part of her knew. Part of her had always known. She just didn't want to admit it in front of the man she once promised forever to. That night, after the kids were in bed, Laura and Mark sat in the kitchen. The light was dim, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound for several long minutes. Then Mark said quietly, "Do you still love him?" Laura didn't lie. "I don't know if it's love. But I miss him. And I miss the way I felt when I was with him." Mark nodded. Looked down at the table. "Then you have a choice to make." Laura swallowed. "What if I want to stay? What if I want to fix this?" "Then prove it," he said. "Because right now all I have is pain. And a house full of reminders." She reached for his hand. He let her. But he didn't squeeze back. The next day, Laura drove to Daniel's house. She didn't call first. He answered in a t-shirt and jeans, hair mussed, eyes tired like hers. "I didn't think I'd see you again," he said. "I needed to." "Why?" She took a breath. "Because I have to let go." He stepped back. "Come in." She shook her head. "No. If I go in, I won't leave." Daniel's eyes glistened. "So this is goodbye." "I don't know what it is," she said. "I just know I can't be here and try to save my marriage at the same time." Daniel nodded. "I love you, Laura." She closed her eyes. "And that's why I can't keep this going. Because you deserve someone who doesn't have to lie to kiss you." He nodded. Didn't say anything else. And she left. When she got home, she sat in her parked car for a long time. Hands trembling. Heart empty. She had finally chosen. But the choice didn't come with peace. Came with silence. And sometimes silence was the heaviest thing of all. Chapter 8. The rebuilding no one claps for. The first Monday after she said goodbye to Daniel, Laura made pancakes. Not the instant kind from a box. She got up early, sifted flour, cracked eggs, melted butter, added vanilla. She made them the way her mom used to when she and her sister were little, the smell filling the kitchen like a memory she wanted to crawl inside of. She set the table. Juice for the kids. Coffee for Mark. Strawberries on the side. No one said anything at first. Lucas blinked, still groggy, then beamed. "Pancakes." "Yup," Laura said, flipping the last one onto a plate. "Thought you guys deserved something special." Ella eyed her cautiously. "Is it a special occasion?" "No," Laura said softly. "Just trying." Mark sat down last. Said nothing. But he ate them. 2 plates full. That felt like something. In therapy that week, the therapist asked, "What does rebuilding look like for you?" Laura said, "Honesty." Mark said, "Distance. At least for now." So they started sleeping in the same room again, but with pillows between them. Literal space. A no man's land neither crossed. Some nights they talked. Most nights they didn't. But at least they were in the same bed. That counted for something too. Laura deleted Daniel's number. Took her 3 tries. She hovered over it, her thumb shaking, staring at the digits like they were coordinates to a place she couldn't afford to visit again. Then she pressed down. Delete contact. He tapped yes. And exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for weeks. At school pickup, she saw one of the other moms, Jenna, glance at her and whisper to another. The glance that lasted a second too long. The hush that always came too late. She didn't blame them. Word had gotten around. Mia swore she hadn't said anything, but small towns are designed to circulate shame like wildfire. And when people can't name their own pain, they love talking about someone else's. That night Mark said, "If you want to leave this town, I wouldn't stop you." Laura paused mid-fold of a t-shirt. Are you saying that because you want me gone? I'm saying it because I don't know what's harder. Staying where everything reminds me of what you did, or leaving and wondering if I gave up too soon. She sat down, laundry forgotten. Do you want this marriage to work? She asked quietly. I want it, Mark said. I just don't know if I can trust the version of us we'd be after this. Laura nodded slowly. Then let's not aim for what we had. Let's aim for what we could be. With no illusions. No pretending. He didn't respond. But he didn't leave the room either. Lucas started acting out at school. Pushing. Talking back. Drawing angry scribbles in his notebooks. The teacher called. Suggested maybe he talk to the school counselor. When Laura told Mark, he stared at the wall for a long time. I thought we were hiding it well, he finally said. No, Laura said. We were just pretending well. They signed the papers for counseling the next day. Ella stayed quiet. Too quiet. She didn't act out. Didn't lash out. She just started locking her door. Laura knocked one night. Can I come in? Ella opened the door, then went back to her desk without speaking. Laura sat on the edge of the bed. I know we broke something. Ella didn't look up from her book. Yeah. I don't expect you to forgive me. Not now. Maybe not ever. Okay, Ella said, still not looking at her. But I'm still your mom. I still love you. And I'm here. For all of it. After a long pause, Ella looked up. Do you love Dad? Yes. Did you love the other man? Laura's throat tightened. No. Not in the way that matters. But I loved what he made me feel. And that was wrong. I know that. Ella stared at her for a while. Then turned back to her book. But she left the door open that night. Mark started touching her again. Little things. A hand on her back when she passed. A brush of his fingers when she handed him a plate. Nothing dramatic. Nothing like it used to be. But it was something. One night they were watching a movie. Nothing special, some bad rom-com. Laura wasn't even paying attention. But then he said, You know I still think about our trip to Savannah? She looked over. Yeah. That place with the rooftop bar and the weird bartender who looked like Morgan Freeman's cousin. She laughed. God, he made the worst mojitos. I still liked being there with you. They didn't talk much after that. But his hand stayed on her knee until the credits rolled. The next therapy session, the therapist asked, What does forgiveness look like for you now? Mark said, It's not a finish line. It's a decision I'll have to keep making. Laura said, It's knowing I don't deserve it, but wanting to be worthy of it anyway. The therapist nodded. That's a start. Late one night, Laura stood in the bathroom, brushing her teeth, staring at her own reflection. She didn't look like a villain. She didn't look like a victim. She just looked tired. But when she turned to go back to bed, Mark was there, already lying down, eyes on her. Come here, he said. She crawled in. And this time he pulled her close. No words. No promises. Just two people in the wreckage, choosing not to walk away. Chapter 9. The test we didn't see coming. Spring came late that year. The snow melted in April, leaving the yard a patchy mess of brown and stubborn ice. Lucas begged to bring out his soccer ball. Ella stayed holed up in her room with books and earbuds, surfacing only for meals and occasionally therapy. Inside the house, things were still tense, but they were together. That mattered. Laura and Mark had begun having real conversations again. Short, deliberate exchanges about the future. Finances, summer plans, whether or not to redo the living room. It was progress. Some nights they fell asleep back to back. Other nights, their hands found each other somewhere in the dark between midnight and regret. They weren't okay. But they were no longer broken beyond repair. Until Daniel emailed. It wasn't a love letter. Not even close. The subject line was short. Just her name. Inside a single paragraph. I heard you're trying to make things work. I hope you get what you need. I just wanted to say I still think about you. Not in the selfish way. Just in the way that means I hope you're really happy. That you didn't settle back into something safe just because it was easier. That's all. Laura read it 3 times. Then closed her laptop and walked into the kitchen, hands shaking slightly as she reached for a glass of water. She didn't respond. But for the first time in weeks, she thought about responding. That night, she sat across from Mark at the kitchen table after the kids had gone to bed. He was reading a home inspection report on a rental property they were thinking of investing in. She stared at his face for a long time before speaking. "Daniel emailed me," she said. Mark didn't look up, but his body stiffened. "What did he say?" "Nothing inappropriate. Just that he hopes I'm happy. That I didn't come back to you out of guilt." Mark set the papers down slowly. "And did you?" Laura blinked. "No." He met her eyes. "Then don't let him live rent-free in our house anymore." She nodded. But that night she dreamed of Daniel. Not the man, not even the affair, just the feeling. The rush. The validation. The sense of being new again. She woke up with tears in her eyes and Mark's arm around her. It didn't feel like betrayal. But it didn't feel like peace either. The next test came from a place they didn't expect. Laura's sister, Caroline. She came up from Atlanta with her 2 kids in tow for a surprise weekend visit. Laura hadn't told her the whole story, just the headlines. Rough patch therapy, working on things. Caroline always had a blunt mouth and sharp instincts. "So," she said over wine that Saturday night, "are we pretending the elephant in the room doesn't exist, or are you going to tell me what the hell happened?" Laura sighed. "It's complicated. It's always complicated." "What did you do?" Mark was in the other room watching cartoons with the kids. Laura looked toward the doorway, then lowered her voice. "I had an affair." Caroline stared at her for a long moment. "Jesus. I know. With who?" "An old friend. Daniel. Daniel Blake." Laura winced. "You mean the guy from college who always had his hand on your knee when you were with Chris?" "It wasn't like that." Caroline raised an eyebrow. "You sure?" Laura sipped her wine. "It wasn't supposed to happen. But it did. And now I'm trying to save my marriage." Caroline leaned back. "Does he know?" "Yes. And he stayed." Laura nodded. "Then he's either a saint or an idiot." "No," Laura said, quieter now. "He's just someone who still wants to believe we're worth it." Caroline studied her. "And do you?" Laura looked down at her glass. "I want to." That night, Caroline cornered Mark while Laura was getting the kids ready for bed. "Why are you still here?" she asked. He didn't flinch. "Because I still love her. And that's enough." "No," he said. "But it's where we're starting." Caroline didn't respond right away. Finally she just said, "I hope you know what you're doing." "I don't," Mark said. "But I know what I'm not doing. I'm not letting what we built die without a fight." The next few weeks passed quietly. Laura and Mark settled into a rhythm. Date nights returned if cautiously. Early dinners, awkward small talk that sometimes bloomed into real conversation. They laughed again, even if it was only for 5 or 10 minutes at a time. One night in late May, Mark reached for her hand while they were walking home from dinner. She let him. They walked in silence for a block, then he said, "I still think about it. What you did." She nodded. "I do too. But I also think about what we could be. If we make it through this." Laura looked over at him. "And what's that?" He gave her a half smile. "Older. Wiser. More honest. Definitely poorer if this therapy bill keeps up." She laughed. It wasn't quite a new beginning, but it felt like a middle worth fighting for. One evening after the kids were in bed, Laura opened her laptop. Daniel's email was still in her inbox. She hovered over it one last time. Then she clicked, delete. Not with rage. Not with regret. Just with the quiet relief of someone finally choosing not to look back. Chapter 10. The Love That Stayed. By summer, the edges had softened. The house was no longer full of silence, but sound. Dinner sizzling, the clatter of Ella's sneakers dropped by the door, Lucas giggling at something on TV. There were still ghosts, but they didn't haunt so loudly anymore. Laura stood at the kitchen sink one evening, watching Mark in the backyard as he helped Lucas build a tiny soccer goal out of PVC pipe. He was laughing, really laughing, and for the first time in months she didn't feel like an intruder in her own family. She dried her hands, opened the sliding door and stepped outside. Mark looked up. "I'm thinking popsicles," she said. Lucas cheered. "Red ones." Mark smiled faintly. "Make that 2 red ones." That weekend marked their 15th wedding anniversary. There was no trip, no fancy dinner. Just the two of them, sitting on the back porch with takeout, 2 candles, and a bottle of wine they'd been saving since 2020. "I thought we'd be somewhere else by now," Laura said, swirling her glass. "Physically or emotionally?" "Both." Mark looked out at the trees, where the sunlight caught the leaves in patches of soft gold. "I think," he said slowly, "this is where we were always going to end up. Just didn't know what we'd have to walk through to get here." Laura nodded. "Do you still want to be here?" He turned to her. "I wouldn't be anywhere else." She reached across the table and took his hand. There were no big declarations, no vows renewed, just the quiet pulse of forgiveness, trying to grow roots. Months passed. Ella started high school. Lucas joined a travel soccer team. Therapy went from twice a week to once a week to only if we need it. They needed it less and less. But sometimes Laura would wake up in the middle of the night, her heart racing, that cold dread still lodged deep inside her. Not because she missed Daniel, but because she knew how close she had come to destroying everything she had built. She never contacted him again. He never reached out again either. It wasn't closure, but it was enough. One Saturday Laura and Mark took the kids to the lake. It was the kind of day they used to dream about. Perfect weather, no obligations, just water and sky and the simple kind of happiness that doesn't announce itself. They sat in folding chairs, toes in the sand, watching Lucas try to bury Ella up to her neck while she screamed at him in mock fury. "You think they're okay?" Laura asked quietly. "I think they're better than we give them credit for," Mark said. "Kids feel everything, yeah. But they also heal faster than we do. Because they're not carrying guilt. Just confusion." Laura nodded. "I don't think I'll ever stop carrying it." "Good," he said. She looked over, surprised. He was still watching the kids. "If you stopped," he said, "you wouldn't be the woman I forgave." Forgiveness, she learned, wasn't a prize he gave her. It was a practice. It was showing up on hard days. It was holding each other when the memory hit out of nowhere. It was saying, "I'm still here," even when the easy thing would have been to walk. And it was also learning to forgive herself. Not because she deserved it, but because she needed to believe she could be better than her worst moment. 1 year after the affair ended, they went back to therapy. Not because they were broken again, but because they wanted to check in before they drifted apart in new, quieter ways. "I think we're okay," Mark said. Laura nodded. "I think we're stronger now." The therapist smiled. "Then why are you here?" "To make sure we don't get lazy," Mark said. "Complacency is what got us here in the first place." Laura added, "We want to learn how to grow again. Not just survive." It wasn't the beginning of something new. It was the continuation of something hard and real and beautiful in its imperfection. A few months later on a Tuesday, Laura found an old photo while organizing a drawer. It was from their 3rd anniversary. Mark holding her up in front of a beat-up cabin in the mountains, both of them smiling, their cheeks red from wind and wine. She brought it into the living room where Mark was reading. "Remember this?" she asked, holding it up. "You look mild. You wore that hideous scarf I hated. You said I looked cute. I lied." She laughed and sat beside him. After a beat, she said, "I miss those people." He nodded. "Me too. But I like who we are now more." She leaned against him. "Me too." And that was it. No fireworks. No grand finish. Just 2 people still choosing each other. After everything. Because sometimes love doesn't sound like "I forgive you." Sounds like "I'm still here."